Not worried at all. I rely on God, Allah.
I'm glad. This is a very poignant question. There's an element in Islam which has been eviscerated. It's been politically, surgically eviscerated from the Muslim consciousness and thinking in order to make them impotent, ineffective, divided among themselves, and locked into culture. This is called jama'ah.
Some of these people, when you bring up like an Islamic centric view of something, that's actually looked upon as something negative. Oh, you can't look at it from an Islamic centric point of view. You know what I mean? You have to that means you've identified yourself as a Muslim, whereas you need to identify yourself as like a regular citizen. But that, you can't separate that, because we're going to look at justice issues through an Islamic lens, right? I'm really enjoying, by the way, the conversation. It's very good. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum. Addressing real issues with real solutions with real Muslim communities living in the West. Join the Haqq podcast family as we go beyond the theoretical. Connect with us at youtube.com/Dr. Syed for all your Haqq episodes, and support us by subscribing and hitting the notification bell for all new episodes coming your way.
I'm really enjoying, by the way, the conversation. It's very good. Alhamdulillah. So you reminded me, actually, when you talked about like we're risk averse. I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. When I was in the Muslim Students Association, I think it got worse over time. I felt when I first, got into the game, like, late 90s, early 2000, there were people more willing to take risks, especially fi sabilillah, for the Dawah, putting themselves, and it just became like people became just softer and softer over time, not willing to take that risk. And with no risk, of course, you get less reward, less gains for the ummah. And as you mentioned, the life of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Well, let's even go to the best Sahaba. I would say, if we talk about the life of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, there was, in terms of the commitment and willing to risk it all for that commitment, there's no other Sahabi who is willing to do that. And that's why Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he said, both of them made that statement. The mu'min of Pharaoh and Abu Bakr made that statement, أَتَقْتُلُونَ رَجُلٌ أَيَقُولَ رَبِّيَ اللَّهِ, that are you killing a man because he said his Lord is Allah, right? Except the difference, he said, one moment in the life of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu is worth more than 1,000 of the mu'min of Pharaoh, because the difference between the two is the mu'min of Pharaoh kept his deen secret and hidden and away. He didn't take any exposure, that risk, whereas Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he as soon as the da'wah is given, he said about him, who was sabaq, he was the first, he accepted Islam, he was the first to be there to defend Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was the first to risk it all his wealth, to donate it for the sake of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. And that's why we see he's the first of the Khulafa Rashidun. He'll be the first after the Anbiya and Jannah. So without that, him taking those risks based on those principles right away, he would not have that status as he would. So I 100% agree with you that we need the courage to be able to take those risks. And when you're so attached to the dunya, I think it goes also hand in hand with that hadith of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he describes wahan, how the people will just be able to take advantage of you, because why? It's hubb ad-dunya. You're holding on. You don't want to risk losing anything from this dunya, right? And courage, especially amongst leaders, if they know the truth, they need to step up and speak the truth. And we need people to support them, because even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all the other anbiya, none of the other anbiya had that core group of companions to support them as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. And we should appreciate that this dawah needs to be carried, like, if we have good leaders, that needs to be supported with people who are willing to risk their personal comfort, well-being for their leader, as an extension of ati Allah wa ati Rasul, right? Like as an extension of that, of being Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So leaders, I feel one thing that we need to do and start to do, and I want to get your insight, maybe perhaps on how we can do this, is that if you go amongst the common people, they're more willing to focus on the differences, the past indiscretions, rather than the future building of a relationship. The awam, the general, they usually do this. How can we do this? Because there is, amongst and you discussed this, I believe, as well in your in some of your videos that you have on Facebook. Like, you have um, this tension between Arabs and the black community, and the black community, the Asians, and you know what I mean. Everyone has like these tensions amongst each other. Sometimes a little bit of distrust. Maybe there's past indiscretions, and how can now a group of people rise above that from all of these different communities? Because, for example, I 100% agree. The voice, the power that we can get from the African American, get from the Asian community, for maybe different than the Arab community, and so forth. So rather than looking at, okay, this is the reason why we're in such a bad situation. Okay, what are the talents? How can I be a talent scout and bring all the talents together to build a
Okay.
championship team?
Okay.
How can we
Good.
be that talent scout, Shaykh?
Very good. I'm glad. This is a very poignant question. There's an element in Islam which has been eviscerated. It's been politically, surgically eviscerated from the Muslim consciousness and thinking in order to make them impotent, ineffective. What he did with the Ansar and the Muhajirin, okay, is the first thing that he did. If we study the seerah, and this is another reason why we have problems among the Muslims, because maybe they have memorized the Quran outside of the context of the seerah, okay, or they have studied the hadith outside of the context of the akhlaq. Okay, so you got people that are walking Qurans, meaning in the sense of just memorization, or you got people who have memorized a lot of hadith outside of the akhlaq. Okay, so what are they basically doing? They're just kind of like regurgitating the Quran itself, or they're just giving you principles from the hadith, which sound good inside of a room or inside of a masjid, but it's without the substance. Okay, so when you connect the asbab al-nuzul, when you connect the reasons and the circumstances for which the Quran was revealed, as it was revealed, and you connect that to the hadith, then you start to see, oh, it was this circumstance and it was this reason and this was the setting when this hadith was mentioned. Like khayrukum man ta'allama al-Quran wa 'allama. The person who related that to us is Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu. So who was the person that actually characterizes that hadith? The one that related it to us is the one that heard it directly from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it was the manner of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sometimes to say something in the face of the person that characterized that particular issue. Okay, so when you start looking at these, how the seerah connected the Quran and connected the hadith, the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because in Mecca he did not have a real community. He lived in Darul Arqam for a certain period of time. Okay, so he lived in isolation, but he could not build a social component, okay, because of the oppression. But when he made the treaty of the Aqaba Ula and Aqaba Thani, when he made that treaty and then he went, one of the conditions was that they would protect him. He didn't have that protection in Mecca, right? Secondly, when he went to Medina or to Yathrib, he found a cosmopolitan place, okay, different. There were Jews, there were Christians from Najran, there were the Jews, the Christians, there were the desert Arabs, there were the Aus and the Khazraj, who was about to have a civil war. There was others from the surrounding areas. There was a totally diverse, ethnic footprint in Medina, a diverse ideological footprint in Medina, a different makeup of people. So when Allah brought the Prophet ﷺ, he brought him there as an arbiter. He didn't send him to the Prophet, send him there as a prophet, except to that 12 people who came the first time and that 70 people who came the second time. Those was the people who he came as a prophet and a messenger. The rest of Medina, the Christians, the Jews, the desert Arabs, and all the surrounding tribes, he didn't come as a prophet. He came as a personality that was known to be trustworthy, and he could possibly he could dispel or arbitrate this pending civil war and give to that place some kind of social stability. So think about that point. Next thing, what did the Prophet do when he got to Medina, to Yathrib? The first thing he did was he united the people around himself, the people that had an oath to him. He said to them, do not call this city anymore Yathrib. You must call it now Medina to Nabi, the city of the Prophet. So if you want to call it urban identity. So that was number one. The second thing, he understood that there were dynamics in Yathrib that were quite different and explosive, that if he didn't resolve it quickly, there's going to be some problems from the Muhajirin and the Ansar. And so he made them, what did he do? He made them brothers. He took Ansar and he took Muhajirin and he put them together and he said, you must act as brothers. So what did the Ansar do because of their nature? They took the Muhajirin into their homes. They made them family members. And so because of that, the seed of Jama'ah began to build. And that Jama'ah was not built upon ethnicity. That Jama'ah was surely the Arab culture in general was still there. But that Arab culture was so diversified that, that was still, maybe it was like a boiling pot. But the Prophet ﷺ, in his wisdom, he arbitrated issues between the Ansar and the Muhajirin. He arbitrated between them and he made them brothers. And gradually he created a social fiber where they started to see themselves as one. And because they started to see themselves as one and to address issues as one, then even the non-Muslims of Yathrib, they were able to defend him. They were able to defend their city. They were able, to benefit. And the Prophet ﷺ was able to grow in that seed, in that soil of Yathrib, like he could not inside Mecca. So it's brotherhood. Number two, community. Brotherhood breeds community. And community is not just where you are. Muslims keep using this terminology, I'm from such and such a masjid. People ask me, Shaykh, what masjid do you belong to? I always say to them, brother, what are you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
In the masajid lillah. The masjids belong to Allah. We don't belong to the masjids. That's number one. Number two, because you built a masjid from the ground up, you say that this is our community. You don't have a community, you have a congregation. You have a congregation inside of a building. That is not a community inside of a geographical area. A community is made up of people that live together, that have a similar urf, what you call social consciousness, speak maybe a similar language and experience, and they pay taxes, and they benefit from similar central institutions. They make similar sacrifices, and they come to know each other through a period of time. This is a community, and there are leaders in that community that are recognized, and those leaders are also accountable, and responsible. So this is a community. What has happened in the Muslim world is that the idea of community doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. So I have visited 32 of the major Muslim countries out of the 87, well, actually out of the 97 countries that I have visited, 32 of them are major Muslim countries. And essentially, for the most part, they don't have what's called brotherhood and community, because the word brotherhood now has been criminalized in much of the Muslim world. If you use this terminology more than once in your talk, in giving a khutbah, you probably will be put in jail afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly,
it'll be like, come here, brother, come with us into jail.
Yeah. So the word brotherhood has been criminalized in most of the Muslim world, if you're using it from a political, open point of view. Okay, next. The word community, jama'ah, now is looked to be sort of like a clique. If you use the word jama'ah, they're going to associate it with, jama'atul muslimin, or jama'atul fuqra, or jama'atul this, or jama'ah that, which is sort of like a clique or a clan, or some kind of schism, or some kind of or some kind of a group that's been banned or something. The word jama'ah has now been given a distorted view. So Muslims don't want to hear about brotherhood. They don't want to hear about jama'ah. Whereas Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he said, and I'll just paraphrase it for the audience. Umar said, there's no Islam without jama'ah. SubhanAllah. He didn't mean there's no. He didn't mean that there's no arkan al-Islam, arkan al-Iman. That's not what he meant. He meant that there is no social public manifestation of Islam without the jama'ah, without a community, because a community is able to give sensory perception and evidence of Islam to another community. And without that community existing, the people can see nothing except themselves and some distorted images of Islam. And that's our problem. So what I'm trying to do as an individual, to the best of my ability, I want to bring back brotherhood. I want to bring back community. I want to bring it back outside of the clique, the cultural cliques and groups that came together around personalities. I want to bring it together outside of that. You know, for instance, and I don't mind to say this, you know, part of my early experience with community, it came because I read pretty deeply the books of Hassan al-Banna, the books, you know, of Abu Ala Maududi. Okay, for me, I grew up, I lived, I ate from Hassan al-Banna. Okay, I lived and ate from Abu Ala Maududi. Okay, and today my inside is still living from them, because they gave me through their writings, not so much through their groups. They gave me through their writings the sense of brotherhood, dignity, social activism, okay, and community. And so, unfortunately, both of their lives have been distorted and almost criminalized. Why? Because the people who have the money and the influence and have their own agendas, they don't want those kinds of personalities to be building stuff from the ground, because it will cause disturbance and aggravation to their political platforms and governmental setup, so to speak. Okay, so I say that what we need to do today is, without using the names of Abu Ala Maududi, you know, or Sayyid Qutb, you know, and so people want to call us, you know, Qutbis, or they want to call us Maududis, or they want to give us some other kinds of names. So what we have to do is we have to use the fertilizer from what they have given to us and their teachers and their sources, and put that into the soil of the 21st century. And then we have to develop another garden. We have to develop another consciousness, which is built on brotherhood, community, and social responsibility. Those are the three things: brotherhood, community, and social responsibility. Now, brotherhood is between ourselves, how we treat each other, how we see each other, our loyalty towards each other, our love for each other, our respect for each other. You know, the fact that when I go to places in the Muslim world, I sit at the table in a family's house. The wife, the daughter, the aunt, the grandmother, everybody is at the table. The maids, the servants, they're all eating at the same table. And nobody's afraid to be exposed. You know, the women are not running away someplace and hiding, you know, because in their culture, you don't have to. They all feel safe. It's a family environment, and we're eating together. It doesn't mean that I have direct access to somebody's wife or direct access to somebody's daughter or grandmother. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that they have trusted me to come inside their home, to break bread in the face of their entire family. This is what was done in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This was done in the time of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Even though there was still a veil, there was a distinction and a veil, and what you want to call it, a hijab, between the men and the women, to keep their moral dignity and distinction and all of that. Still, the brotherhood, the things that breed community, was done. It was acted upon. So we don't have that today. We have been indoctrinated that women should be on the other side, men should be on that side. You know, when I should not ask about your family. I remember one day I was with a scholar. I'll be honest with you. I was with a scholar one day that I lived in his house. He's one of my teachers. And I respect him today highly because of what he gave to me. And one day I was leaving to come back to America. And I said to him, Shaykh, please give my salam to your wife and thank her for whatever it is. He said, what? He asked me, what did you say? I said, Shaykh, please give my salam to my sister, your wife. He told me, Shaykh, look, let me tell you this. He told me in our country, a man doesn't say that to another man about his wife. He says, I understand what you're saying because, you know, our relationship, but let me tell you, don't do that again to another person like me because you're going to find out the doors will be closed and you'll never be invited and it's an insult. I couldn't believe that. I mean, subhanAllah. I understand it now from the conditioning, but the point I'm trying to say is that we lost brotherhood. We don't ask about each other's families, not sincerely. We don't visit each other, not sincerely. We don't interact together. We don't even buy from each other. You know, I go to masjids, and in the khutbah, I give an example. I say, brothers, how many of you can tell me the names of 5 of your neighbors by first name? There could be a congregation of 300, 400, 500 people, and you know what? There's not even 5 or 10 people that can give me the names of their neighbors. SubhanAllah. Secondly, I ask brothers, okay, brothers, we're all brothers. How many of you can look at the brother to your right, look at the brother to your left, look at the brother in front of you or the sister in back of you, and tell me what's the name of their children? They can't do it. Okay, secondly, what's their wife's name? Have you been to their house? Did you eat dinner with them? So how do you know each other? You come to the mosque and see each other? So brotherhood has been killed. That's number one. Let's move on to community. Community in Islam, when Umar al-Khattab said there's no Islam without Jama'ah, what he meant is that he said there's no Islam without Jama'ah and no Jama'ah without an Amir. He didn't say without an Imam. When we look to a congregation, we look into the Imam. But in reality, in the Muslim world today, and in North America in particular, the Imam is a nobody. In terms of the hierarchy, the food chain, you know and I know that usually the Imam is just a hired guy who's brought in because he knows the Quran, he knows the Arabic language, he has some history and delivery, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to what's going on in policy and being an executive, he's a nobody. It's set up that way. Why? Because they don't want an Imam that might get influence with the people and affect the policies of those who have executive status. That's just the way it goes. Now, I didn't say it's a conspiracy. No, it has become a part of the culture of the mosque.
Yes.
Okay, so therefore, we don't have a community because that Imam, he cannot, as a personality, build that community and that link between the blacks and the Hispanics and between the Arabs and the Asians and the Africans. He can't do that. Why? Because maybe an African brother then is going to ask for a Bangladeshi family for their daughter. And you know what that means. That is a no. Excuse me for using that terminology, but I have to be kind of like keep it real. Okay, so nobody wants some guy from Nigeria to be asking for their Syrian daughter. So to avoid that, they keep all those barriers locked down, and the masjids are usually, you know, behind the scenes. It might be called Masjid Umar al-Khattab. It might be called Masjid Abu Huraira. They might be called Masjid Furqan, but in reality, it's the Bengali mosque. It's the Turkish mosque. You know what I mean? It's the Saudi mosque, or it is the Yemeni mosque, or it's the Somali mosque. But you know, and I know, and all the other Muslims know that there's a group, an ethnic group that controls that mosque and the policies of that mosque forever. And they're never going to allow any other ethnic group to come in, to mix in, and to join them in their executive influence. And that has become an unspoken rule. I want to gradually break that rule down by doing what? Insisting upon brotherhood. Number two, insisting from the younger generation upon developing the platform of community, where we have an Amir. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and I'll paraphrase it. He says, if any 3 of you is on a journey, select one person to be the Amir. So if it's just a journey, it's only a journey from one place to another, 50 miles or 100 kilometers or whatever we're going. What about if you're on a journey of life? No Amir? Just an imam to lead the prayer? No, if you don't have an amir, it's just like we say, those who do not have a plan, those who do not, those who fail to plan to fail. Okay, similarly, those who live in a community where there is not amr, very clear amr, that somebody has the final decision, not the board of trustees, not the president, you know, because these are intellectual guys, these are doctors, these are whatever you want to call it, and yeah, they invested the money, and yeah, they're smart, but they're not activists, they're not on the ground. In many cases, they don't have even a connection to the common people. No, there has to be an amir who has the final decision in all matters of arbitration and judgment and dealing with the people. So this is community. The next is called social responsibility. When you have brotherhood and you have a community, now you can interact with the greater community, even if they're non-Muslims, as the Prophet did in Medina, because you take social responsibility. You are now taking the responsibility of your neighbors. You're dealing with not the neighbors, but they're also the social infrastructure. You are attending gatherings, the city, you're going to the city hall meetings. You know, you are engaged in social, political issues, even if you don't vote, okay? You are discussing issues of social responsibility. You are meeting with other people and taking responsibility for your actions. And you are dealing with the demographics and all this is. This is brotherhood, community, and social responsibility, which is not tolerated in the Muslim world today, except in certain small circles. You know, if you go to Indonesia, if you go to Malaysia, if you go to East or West Africa, you know what I'm saying? If you go to certain parts of the Arabian Peninsula, you know, you may find that, you know, the small little groups in a village who might do that. But on the whole, brotherhood, community, and social responsibility has been eviscerated, just like the bone has been taken out of boneless chicken. You know, and that, if anybody knows how the bone is taken out of a chicken so that you get boneless breast, you know, you get boneless chicken fillet. How's that done? It's done surgically. And it is done surgically in the Muslim world. So I have become an advocate for the Muslims when I'm talking to non-Muslims, right? But when I'm talking to Muslims inside the house, I'm not advocating their particular predicaments. I'm advocating for what? Brotherhood, community, social responsibility. And in my book, Islam, America, and the World, some of the Muslims are going to ask the question, hey, Shaykh, why you didn't talk about, I mean, you're an African American. Why didn't you talk about the African American experience in your book? I mean, you have a chance to reach all the people and let people know our situation, because the book is not about you. That's my answer. The book is not about you. Maybe in the second volume, I will do that. Maybe in the third volume, I'm going to do that. But this first volume, this is not about you. It's about us as an ummah. When we talk about Islam, it's about us. And I don't have, it's 150 pages. I mean, it's 200 pages, the book, the first volume, 220 pages maybe. So I don't have 100 pages to talk about us, you know, the African American experience, because I happen to be an African American Muslim. That's what I'm going to tell them. So part of the book, I'm talking about Islam, clarifying it, removing the misconceptions and distortions. I'm talking about the pathology of Islamophobia. I'm talking about the whole concept of terrorism and how terrorism as a concept, as an idea, as a movement, really was born among the Europeans. The Europeans are the people who in the last 500 years have committed more terrorism in the world than any other group of people in the world today. Yet, in the last 50 years, they transferred the crime of terrorism to Muslims because it was. So now, what I'm trying to do now is, and I'm talking about Islam, and then I got to talk about America. I'm an American. So I can't talk about America as being the what do you call it, the big shayateen. You know what I mean? Like people want to call America the big shaitan. Yeah, there is a big shaitan in America. Excuse me, doctor, for maybe I'm taking up too much time. You have to stop me. You know, yeah, America is a big shaitan in terms of its subculture. But if you want to look at the Constitution of the United States and the structure, you know, of the American society, its government, its institutions, its influence in the world today, it is not a big shaitan. It is a huge consortium of products and services that has never been seen or exhibited in the world before. And I am proud to be a part of that because it gives me as an African American an empowerment that I never imagined that I would ever have, or that any other African Americans could ever have. And this is from Allah. You know, subhanAllah, when Allah takes something from some people, He gives them something else. But sometimes it takes time for you to realize what He's given to you. So having said that, I'm answering your question in this way. How do we approach that phenomena or that situation that we're in? We have to revisit, to the best of our ability, according to the stations that we have to revisit these three components and implant this in the minds of Muslims: brotherhood, community, and social responsibility. If we do that, Doctor, in my belief, in my humble belief, if we are able to do that, we are going to add a new component back to the Muslims that we had before. That's going to bring a new respect and a new refinement to Islam, that the world can see a new template. And guess what? If that happens, it's not going to happen in the East. It's going to happen in the West. And therefore, it is my belief, and I'm telling Muslims what I can see. I believe that the Islam that we are looking for is not the historical Islam in the sense of the Quran and in the sense of the Sunnah, yes. But in the sense of it coming from a historical civilization, no. America, North America, and Europe is where the new Islam is going to come from. And when these three components are refined inside of America and inside of Europe, the new renaissance for Islam is going to come to the world. This is my conclusion inside of my book. And some people might say, well, Shaykh, you're a bit biased. Oh, Shaykh, you know what I'm saying? You know, like that's kind of like whatever. But guess what? If I want to summarize it to the people, that's what I want to tell them. And guess what? When I talk to the various immigrant communities in America who came from the 54 Muslim countries, you know, there are about 54 or so Muslim countries identified in the United Nations. So when those immigrants come from those countries and come to America, guess what? 95% of them are never going to go back home except for a visit. 95% of their children are going to go maybe to their mother country and visit, but they're going to hasten to get back to America or back to Europe or back to Canada. Why? Because the products, the services, the quality of life, the civil liberties, the constitutional privileges, and all of that are just too many for somebody to just ignore and go back to the dysfunction, the constitutional dysfunction, the social dysfunction, the cultural dysfunction of the Muslim world as we see it. And I don't mean here to say that the traditional culture of Muslims are dysfunctional. I don't mean to say that. Because when it comes to family, Muslims respect family more than any other group of people that I've ever seen. When it comes to allegiance and treating the guests, Muslims, subhanallah, I have visited Muslim countries where, let me just say, like China, I have visited Muslim families in China, and I have been treated the same as if I had visited a Muslim family in Egypt. The same as I have visited a Muslim family in Mecca. The same as I have visited a Muslim family because it's Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's his dynamic. It's the dynamic. It's the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's behavior, his akhlaq, that you see happening in China. So, subhanallah, in my belief, in my humble awareness and exposure, I believe that if we have workshops, discussions, not upon the academic issues of the Quran and the Sunnah, but let's take out the extraction of brotherhood and put that into the mix. We're going to find a change in disposition in that local community. When people are courageous enough to actually implement brotherhood between themselves, there's going to be a change. Then, when the congregations are courageous enough to say to the board of trustees, listen, we understand you guys have an executive responsibility over the mosque or the institution, and we're going to respect that. But you're not going to preclude us from organizing our executives. Okay, that's another challenge. The third thing is that we have to be brave enough that some of us have got to put down our ethnic,
Baggage.
baggage. And so when this George Floyd thing happened, you see, the Muslim world never saw this before. It just cold cocked them. That's what we call it in English. You know, when you're blindsided, it's called being cold cocked. That means you were hit from the blind side. You never saw it coming. So I understand that the George Floyd situation was part of a conspiracy. And I don't want to go into the conspiracy, but there was the guys who kneeled on him. These was called situation actors. You know, the guy who kneeled on his neck, and a lot of people don't know that, but these are issue, and that issue brings about a certain response, and then certain people like George Soros and other kinds of people who are the billionaires and the hidden hand behind things, they can take actions to do what? To implement things that we don't realize. And if people saw that the George Floyd situation was a crossover from the COVID situation straight into that. The COVID situation had not even subsided. You know, and people's fear and trauma of the COVID came, boom, and which was what? Global and systemic racism. And we crossed over into it just like that. And people were blindsided because they didn't know how to act. So in my country, here in America, the immigrant community just didn't know what to do because many of them were sitting on the fence. And many of them also was inside the communities where they were actively acting as racists. And in fact, the George Floyd thing happened was triggered by an immigrant who overreacted. George Floyd went into his store and gave him a check that when he saw it, the check bounced. It was not a good check. That guy accused him, threatened him, and they called the police. George Floyd left his store. The guy was selling alcohol, girly magazines. He was selling, the lottery and all the haram stuff inside that store. Yet when George Floyd, a black guy, came in and gave him a $25 check, he overreacted. He called the police. When the police came, the whole thing came out. And then this whole thing that happened all over the world, what triggered it? Overreaction with racial overtones. Now that was one. Second thing, after it all happened, the immigrant community didn't know what to do. They were pulverized. They didn't know. Are these guys going to turn on us too? Are they going to be at the footsteps of the mosque? What do? Do we get involved? Do we march? Do we say something? Do we get involved? Until right now, most of them still ICNA, ISNA. I don't know the organizations that are sisters to ICNA and ISNA in Canada, but I can just tell you they were ISNA, ICNA, and mass. They were pulverized. They didn't know what to do, and still, for the most part, they don't know what to do. Why? Because it's a social issue that blindsided them. Whereas if they were already activists in the community and had built up their responsibility and had built up their engagement inside the community, they would have come out into the general community and met with other people in the community and developed a strategy on how to deal with that situation, but they couldn't. So I'll stop right there for a moment.
Yeah, no, Sheikh, what I have noticed here in Canada and by proxy also in the United States is that, you have, as you mentioned, the immigrant community really doesn't get involved in a lot of different social justice issues. And I think that's a byproduct. Like when you speak to them, it's like they have already adopted like the just stick to your own lane, don't stick your head out of the sand,
right.
Mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
I remember there was a person who was a head of a department, Sheikh, if you can imagine a person who's a head of a department in the Department of Medicine, and he was still, and this was him actually leaving Libya for decades, he was still afraid of Gaddafi. Okay, can you imagine like the fear
Imagine,
that's
yes, of
upon
course.
this is the type of mentality. So a person who's like that, of course, they don't really stand up for these types of social justice issues and whatnot. But two things that you mentioned that I believe could be a path forward. So back make one more point. So these organizations, what I have seen them do is that they've just really towed the um, what's been trending. You know, what's like been what would be considered the proper liberal response. You know what I mean? So they haven't come up, they haven't really brought anything unique to the table or really tried to give like the Islamic perspective on this issue. It's just been like, okay, how can we just toe what's being popularized within um, woke people today? You know what I mean? So this is like these are the hashtags we should be liking. This is what we should follow. Oh, let's do end racism, but what does that really mean in terms of being pragmatically implemented? Um, and I've seen actually, and I can tell it's not from an Islamic perspective because some of these people, when you bring up like an Islamic centric view of something, that's actually looked upon as something negative. Oh, you can't look at it from an Islamic centric point of view. You know what I mean? You have to like, you know, that means you've identified yourself as a Muslim, whereas you need to identify yourself as like a regular citizen. But that, you know, you can't separate that because we're going to look at justice issues through an Islamic lens, right? So I have seen people, for example, if you can imagine this, like somebody who's a head of a masjid, who's a president of a masjid, say, Canada has no racism. It's like, no, you may have not experienced racism, okay, you as a person, but you have not taken the time to speak to people who have encountered racism and injustice and have been oppressed or have lost paychecks or whatever, right? So you've never spoken. So you know, to make that type of sweeping statement is very arrogant. It's very out of touch. It's very insensitive, right? So it goes back to, I think, the point that you made, brotherhood. You know, real brotherhood, real care of brotherhood. And when we look at it, it's not just a abstract concept. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us practical, pragmatic signs of what that means, what brotherhood means, what bringing love to each other means, right? Like if we look at it, we say brotherhood, we say unity, but it's like you don't want to put any of the work. You want to win a championship, you didn't do any of the drills, you didn't do any of the hard work, any of the practices, you didn't do any of that stuff. So for example, brotherhood, we talk about we're in a pandemic. One of the rights that a Muslim has on one another is that we visit somebody who's sick. We visit somebody who's sick. One of the rights that we had is to respond to the salam, is to give each other the salam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if you want to increase the love of one another, tuhabu, give gifts and love one another. Give gifts and love one another. Do you need an occasion to do that? No. You know, does it need to be Eid to do that? No. Does it need to be an anniversary? No. Just give gifts and like invest in that relationship in the khuwa. Spread the salam. You make dua for your brother in his absence. The angels are making that same dua for you, right? Practical steps. Funeral. Now we're living in an individualistic lifestyle. You know, Sheikh, we're talking about this culture that we live in. It's so individualistic. Like family members don't see each other for months and maybe years, let alone like, you know, your brothers in Iman. Like, you know, your blood relatives, sometimes people don't see them. They don't look up on, hey, how are you doing? Are you suffering? Do you need anything? You know, you talked about knowing what's going on in a person's household. You can't do that by just exchanging text, Sheikh. But this is the environment that we live in, is that, oh, I know how you're doing. I just text you. You said you're good. There is no script beyond how you're doing it. Fine. That's the script. You know what I mean? There's no script outside of that. But when we look at, you know, what you described of how what a real brotherhood should be, it's like Salman al-Farsi and Abu Darda. Salman al-Farsi is in the house of Abu Darda. He's talking to his wife to see his condition. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't care about the fact. He just cares about salah and like praying in the night and fasting all the time. How is he going to advise his brother if he doesn't know his condition? And the trust of that brotherhood, you try to advise somebody and tell them, Akhi, I see this something is wrong. You know, I feel they'll get offended. There's no trust, Sheikh. How can you have brotherhood without trust? How come Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said a brother is a mirror to another? What does that mean? When you look at a mirror, you're looking for something wrong, to adjust, to fix up, to change on yourself, right, Sheikh?
Yes.
So that whole concept, like you said, we say brother, but it's deep. People don't realize what true brothers in Islam are. That when you have these stories that in the ghazwa afterwards, they're starving for water, and they say, no, give it to my brother before myself. And when they get back to the first one's passed away, he's died. You know what I mean? So when you're saying like that concept, because you can't make a community, Sheikh, you're right, you can't make a community without brotherhood. But the real brotherhood, it's got to be, it's not transactional, Sheikh. That's the problem. We live in a society that's transactional. You invited me for dinner. Okay, now I'll invite you for dinner. You gave this gift to my child. Okay, now I'll give a gift to your child. You know what I mean? What did you do? What can I get from this relation, like a transactional relationship?
Yeah.
But true brotherhood isn't transactional, Sheikh.
Yeah,
You know what I
Doctor,
mean?
let me see if I can comment on a couple of things. There's some gifts that each one of us can give to each other.
Yes.
When we come together, you have a background, and there are some beautiful gifts from your culture that if I take the time, I'm going to be able to gain. My wife, who happens to be a Somali, she says to me one day, she was trying to give me a message, right? And so she said it in a different way a couple of times, but I wasn't listening well, because sometimes a woman, she doesn't really know. She's an immigrant. She just got here. So what does she know about all my things that I'm encountering and my background and all of that there? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not kind of like really listening. Yeah. So then she says it to me in a Bedouin way. So listen what she told me. She told me, Sheikh, she was trying to tell me that, Sheikh, you have to be independent. If you want people to respect you, you have to be independent. You have to be reasonably independent. But she's not an intellectual. She's a Bedouin. I'm saying she would not mind me calling her Bedouin, because it just means what it meant at that time, that she was born in the village. They have very pristine principles about family and community and all of that. They have strong connections to their family. They have strong connections to their culture. And they're kind of like simple people, right? We say not educated, but simple, but very profound. So look what she says to me. She says to me, Sheikh, if you really want to have good influence among the people, she was talking about, we were living in San Diego at the time. So she says to me, Sheikh, we have a saying in Somalia that if you have your own breakfast, anyone will invite you to lunch. I said, wow. I thought about what she said and the implications of what she said. And I mean, somebody that had a PhD, they couldn't have said it any better. That socially, you need to cook the rice. She was telling me, if you cook the rice, anybody can give you vegetables and so on and so. But if you don't cook the rice, ain't nobody going to invite you to lunch. If you don't have your own breakfast, no one is going to invite you to lunch. If you don't have the basic ingredients of stability, nobility, independence, people are going to not really see you to be a distinguished person. They're just not going to do it. This is human. Of course, she's just talking about human people, but she said it in her own way. So, having said that, we can learn something from each other, and that is that if we spend a weekend together, you will be surprised. Just a weekend, like a retreat. You invite me to a retreat. It may start after Jummah. And so we spend Friday night together, we spend Saturday night together, and we go back to our homes on Sunday. Those people that you spend that retreat with, they become a unique group of people in that area for you. You know why? Because they were Africans, they were Asians, they were Arabs, they were African Americans, people from different parts of Asia, and maybe the group was like 50 people, 20 women and 30 brothers, and the sisters was on that side, and the brothers was on another side, and we went out, we did some camping, and we walked the trails, and we ate dinner together in a big dining hall or whatever it was, and we spent that retreat together, You will never forget that experience. Why? Or you will never forget those people. Why? Because in that time, you got up together, you went to sleep together. You ate breakfast together, you ate dinner together. You walked, you talked about their family, their experiences, their childhood, their cultural principles. And you talked about issues that were contemporary and how, if you could, how we would, how not I would, how we could solve this situation. Now, I can tell you that over the last 20 years, I have attended at least 15 or 20 retreats like that. Those people I attended those retreats with tend to become the most prominent people in my mind. So why? Because we were able to demonstrate a microcosm, a macro, a micro. We were able to experience a micro of brotherhood. We lived in that retreat for a moment, community. And we lived it for a little bit until Sunday afternoon. And the next time we saw each other on Monday or in the week sometime, we looked at each other and we said, wow, we just wish we could go back to that. Okay, so
You're literally just describing this leadership camp that we came back from. We've been doing it for this is the 15th year that we did it, and we go for a week. So you're literally just describing subhanallah. Great minds, alhamdulillah, we think alike, alhamdulillah.
When I spoke to your colleague, and in our early discussions, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, in our early discussions, when he said to me, oh, Shaykh, we have this here podcast that we do, and we would really like you to, I was kind of trying to be soft. I was soft gloving him. We call it that, soft gloving. That means that I was not really, because I didn't know him that well. And, I'm trying to be respectful and diplomatic and all of that. But I'm feeling him out. And I'm seeing whether or not I could be honest with this guy, whether to be diplomatic, patronizing, whatever. And I'm trying to cut through the chase, and I tried him on a couple of issues. And he came across good. He backed up and he came back. And he understood what I was saying, even though he's a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, meaning that you would think a doctor, a medical doctor, he can actually sometimes they're very easy to injure. Us guys from the ghetto, sometimes we talk to doctors and guys with PhD, we hit them in the gut and they don't come back again, because they're not just accustomed to that, right? Yeah. So anyway, I said to him, listen, brother, I want to be very honest with you. I appreciate the invitation, but if there's not really something substantial that we're going to accomplish, I'm going to pass on this. That's what I told him in so many words. I want to know, what is the maqasid of this? What do you want to get out of it? You just want to get a podcast, you want to talk, go back. I did hundreds of those and nothing came from it except a pat on the back, okay, a lunch, go out to lunch, okay, and maybe a promise to let's do it again. Nothing has come. And I'm not willing to go through that over and over because there's a waste of time. And I don't need to be popular. And I don't need to come into an environment of talking where we're going to patronize each other. And we're not going to talk about any real issues. And secondly, there's not going to be any aim, no objective at the end. Well, to be honest with you, in that first discussion that we had, he assured me, no, Shaykh, I think that if you take the time to talk with us a little bit more, and you also talk with Dr. Syed, you're going to find that there is some depth to what we are about, and there is some thinking, and there is a maqasid involved. He didn't say maqasid, but objective. Okay. Then it led up to, he and I had a very substantial 1 hour and a half conversation before you and I spoke. After you and I spoke, he and I had another 1.5, 2 hour conversation. And so in those conversations, I was able to roll up my sleeves. I was able to talk a little bit more, and he was able to respond. And I was able to say to myself, okay, I think we got something here. He talked about the leadership camp. He talked about some of the conversations that you guys have had. And so it made me feel a lot more motivated to this. And another thing is, your program wasn't set up for 45 minutes or an hour. I said, whoa, okay, so he really wants to have an open conversation. And he doesn't mind, because in your conversation and my conversation, I tried to be respectful of your background and all of that there. But I dropped a couple of things in that conversation to kind of see whether or not how you would handle it. You handled it very well. I don't mean as an intellectual, but you handled it very well in terms of some of what I consider to be my protocols, some of my concerns that myself and my colleagues, we've decided, okay, that Shaykh, before you go there or some other place, let's set up some protocols so we really get something out of this. Well, you answered and responded to that very well. So I just want to say that I think that I determined that there was a like-mindedness before today. And the other thing is what I determined is that maybe even you guys have taken it to another level, that the Purpose of Life Foundation, okay, my formal organization, the Purpose of Life Foundation, that even though we've maybe done some international global work, some NGO work, and maybe as a personality, maybe I got some leverage or mileage that you guys don't have. But on another level, you guys have done the work. You have begun to initiate the kind of apparatus that I personally, and after talking to my colleagues, that I said to myself, I think that these guys, they're in Canada, and they're a little bit on the, what's called it, they're kind of like on the intellectual side of things, high tech side of things. I'm telling you some of the conversations I had with some of my people, but I kind of think I can handle it, and I think I can kind of like work with them so that maybe through this discussion that they can grill me in front of their audience. And at the same token, I can also reciprocate. I can kind of like grill them too. So we can put the heat to each other's burger, and we come out of it, you understand me, with what we want at the final end, a meal to bite down on. And so this is what I'm finding, and I want to say to your audience that that this was not rehearsed.
Yes, no, this was definitely not rehearsed.
Okay, and even to be honest with you, when one of your technical people sent me a full page of technical protocols, to be honest with you, I didn't like it. I'm a guy that shoots straight from the hip, even though I'm not informal. I research, I prepare, I write things out. I have a script. That's the way a lot of people don't know that, but I am very scripted. When I give a khutbah, I'm very scripted. Sometimes even in the khutbah, people say, Shaykh, why you keep looking down at the paper? Shaykh, just let it flow. Well, I don't, because I know that when you let things flow spontaneous, there's going to be some regrets later on, because even the best speakers and the best intellectuals in the world, they have learned to put a script there, or speech writers have put it there for them, so they have less regrets. Okay.
Yes.
So when your technician gave me that, and I said, hey guys, look, I appreciate all the technical protocols that you got set up, but I'm not really like a technical guy. I got high tech stuff around me, but you can see when we set up, I didn't know a lot of things. That's how I learned, impromptu. I said that, I'm not really comfortable with a lot of that. Guys, look, you want earphones? I got them. You want me to have my iPhone? I got an iPhone. I got a Samsung. I got that. I got a slow Hewlett Packard PC, a personal computer, a laptop that probably is not going to do the job for us. But that's what I've got. I've got a tripod. If that's not technical enough for you guys, I don't know what you want to do, because I'm not just there. So I was talking like that. And your technician also was very nice. They said, Shaykh, don't worry. We'll work with whatever you've got. And, we'll just weed it in. And that's what you've done. And I have to apologize to your audience. I had to dash out to get my cord. You know what I'm saying? I had to kind of like make some other adjustments and all of that because my phone was going off. You had to tell me with your phone, hey, Shaykh, there's a little moon thing on your thing. That means do not disturb. That means I haven't used it before. So I appreciate that you guys were patient and tolerant with me. You know, I'm like a high-tech OG, you know, that doesn't really know how to use all the stuff that's around him. So you guys were patient with that. At the same token, I'm kind of like, how can you say it? I'm a hard rider. What R-I-D-E-R.
Yes, sir.
You know, they got low riders and they got hard riders. That means that the kids in the street call it rocking hard. So for me, excuse my terminology, but the kids in the street, they know what it means when you rocking it hard. That means that sometimes as a OG, an older generation guy, I'm rocking it quite different, and I might make you uncomfortable sometimes because I can switch.
Sheikh, you will make us uncomfortable, Sheikh. You know, like I said, we've dealt with so many different people, and I like. We have no problem with that because one of the things that we train on from the beginning is to have that akhlaq, that adab, to be able to be patient, to deal. That's I think fundamental training that everyone should receive. Unfortunately, we're kind of disconnected with it nowadays. So that hasn't been you know, any trouble at all, and I don't mind that. To tell you the truth, Sheikh, that's understandable. You know what I don't understand, Sheikh? You know what I don't understand? Because I've been in the game, and unfortunately, when you have people who are speaking, representing, teaching, and they're inauthentic, they say something, and it doesn't mean you're exactly the same, because everyone makes mistakes, but you say something and you're fundamentally different in your personal life, or you're fundamentally different behind the microphone, you know, behind the stage. And that, to me, I can't stand that. And we refuse to work with people who are like that. Doesn't matter how popular they are. My goal is just to seek real people. You know, people who keep it 100, people who are authentic. You know, people because you can benefit a lot. Maybe somebody who has a rising star, but if I'm like, that's just a mirage. We don't attach ourselves to that. You know what I mean?
And by the way, Dr. Syed,
Yeah.
in the street, the terminology keeping it 100.
Yeah.
If you say that to the people in the street, you got to keep it 100. They say that guy's corny.
Yeah.
You know, because they don't keep it 100. They say you got to keep it 100.
Yeah, I know. I know that. I don't want to mispronounce it on purpose to look like I'm trying too hard. You know what I mean?
No. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to bring that in.
Yeah.
And this is why,
Keep it
Doctor,
100.
you know,
Yeah.
keep it 100. So, you know, Doctor, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of brotherhood. This is the beauty of Islam. That I will take from you your classic educational, academic training, and other things that you got from your culture, from your mother and father. I will get that when we are together. That refinement that I don't have from the ghetto. At the same token, there are some traits that people in the ghetto have of being able to express themselves that classical people just don't have it. For instance, you know, Mr. Obama, he's really a nerd. Obama is a nerd. You know the word nerd?
Yeah.
Okay. It means a square.
Yeah.
He's not slick. He's not round. He's not hip. He's not, you know, down with the game. But he developed that demeanor and that swagger because it went with the people he wanted to put him into office, and it also fit with the flavor that his party wanted him to have to come in to complement his presidency. His representation of African Americans, although, to be very honest, Mr. Obama did less for African Americans than what was his predecessor?
Bush.
Not Bush, before
Clinton.
Bush.
Clinton.
Clinton did more for African Americans than Obama. Okay, but Obama had the swagger.
Yeah.
Him and his wife could dance, and he could play basketball, and he could say 100. Yo, how you feeling, my man? You know, he was nice with Jay-Z and all of that. You know, so the point is that the beauty of it is that we African Americans, we have a way of cutting to the chase, and we have a way of communicating that the world has adopted. You know, even the cap that you're wearing, you know, and even when I saw you the first time, you were doing another talk and you had the X. And I think to myself, I said, wait a minute, what's he trying to do? You know, and okay, and today you've got that look, and I like that. I mean, it's purposeful.
But Sheikh, you don't know how I grew up, so that's another thing we'll talk about, inshallah.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying you're patronizing us. I'm saying that you have it genuinely. It's not that you're just putting it on because of your program. No, you are from that generation. That's what I'm trying to say. You grew up with that mixture that you feel comfortable to wear that cap. You feel comfortable to put the X on, and you feeling it genuinely. Okay, why? Because it came organically as you were growing up. And I can also do the same thing. I can talk Harvard, I can talk Oxford, or I can talk Harlem in a heartbeat. And this comes because I have assimilated with people of that background. And they have allowed me to live with them and talk with them and interact with them so that it's become almost second nature. I can flip a switch and know when to be corporate. I can flip a switch and know when to be urban. And so this is what Islam demands of us if we really want to become globally effective. And I think that this is sort of what you were hinting on in your previous discussion. And I'm praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the platform that you have, the platform that the Purpose of Life Foundation has established, that we can marry, you know, we can kind of melt these experiences. And it just so happened that we're in North America. So, I mean, like, I'm not saying that this doesn't exist in Europe, but this particular flavor or this particular symmetry that we have in our dialogue right today, and the platform that you have and the experience that I have, this is North American, more so than it is European. And this is indicative of the fact that, to me, that the spirit of the deen, not the historical essence of the deen, but the spirit of the deen, which is moving all the time. When people say Islamic, it doesn't mean Arab, Asian, African. It doesn't even mean the past. Being Islamic is a dynamic that can be housed like gas, that can be housed like energy, that can be housed like social media. So when you say Islamic, it's an energy that is present in every time and every place and of every circumstance, but it has to be packaged. It has to be housed so that it can be delivered. And I'm thinking to myself, sometimes, to be honest with you, Doctor, and I'm talking to your audience also, you know, there are times when I'm kind of thinking to myself, am I kind of like an anomaly? You know, am I really like an odd guy? You know, am I kind of like really thinking about things like I'm kind of like far out? You know, am I kind of like in a bubble by myself? You know, like sometimes I'm thinking that when I write something and I say something, it's like, and I put it on social media, people are saying, wow, Sheikh, where did that come from? You know, what are you talking about? You're a da'i. Why are you talking about these issues? For the past 5 years, I have had to defend my thinking as a social activist, because I've always been a social activist, but in the last 5 to 7 years, I've become a pronounced social activist. I've had to say to people, wait a minute, brother, don't classify me as a da'i in the traditional sense, because when you say da'i in the traditional sense, it means that you are not a social activist. It means that you're not a businessman. It means that you're not politically acute. adept. It means that you're not a person of the world. You're just like in a bubble. You can talk from the khutbah, you can talk hadith and the Quran, you can talk about Islam, and you can invite people, and you can argue with Christians or Jews or whatever it is, and that's what you do. And that's what people feel comfortable. So about 7 years ago, when I started to become a pronounced social activist and start talking, selectively about brotherhood, community, and social responsibility or activism. So I had to address issues like racism. I had to address issues like selfishness. I had to address things that being socially dysfunctional. I had to start looking at Muslims and myself and how Muslims organize them, and people started getting uncomfortable with the new Sheikh Khalid Yasin. Even they would even say, "Oh, this is not the real Sheikh Khalid Yasin." I'm on my Facebook page. Can you believe that? I'm posting on my personal page, not my fan page, and people refused to accept me. No. You're a fake guy. You're not the real Sheikh Khalid Yasin. You are an imposter, because the real Sheikh Khalid Yasin wouldn't be talking like this. Is what they said. So they told me, "Hey, if you're the real Sheikh Khalid Yasin, why you don't have a blue check? Why your thing is not, I don't know what they call it in social media when you've been Facebook.
Verified or something, yeah.
Why you not verified? Why you don't do this? Why you don't do that?" And I would tell them, "Look, that's social media a certification. I don't need it. Maybe I do need it, but for right now, I don't need it for you. This is me talking, and if you don't accept me and you don't identify me, guess what? Go to another page, because, as a shepherd, my sheep know my voice." That's, it goes like that sometimes. If you are a viewer of mine, if you're a brother or sister of mine, and you're in my audience, or my global audience, or whatever you want to call it, you would know me, and you wouldn't have to have me qualify myself because I'm making some statements that you are uncomfortable with. This is what has happened. So Dr. Syed, on behalf of the Purpose of Life Foundation, on behalf of the Purpose Media Group, which is the group that we use for social media, for television, and for our global, if you want to call it, Islamic presentation, because we have changed our terminology of Dawah into Islamic presentation. I went to Oman about 7 years ago. I was invited by His Excellency, the Sultan Qaboos, Ghafarallahu lah. I was invited by him to come there to do a 1 week or a 10-day Dawah training program. But his office, they requested of me, "Sheikh, you were hand selected from a group of about 15 people, and His Excellency asked us to request from you just one thing. Can you change your training from Dawah training? Can you change it to something else which is not so provocative?" And I said, "What do you mean provocative? Dawah, this is classical. This is the Quran." They said, "Yes, Sheikh, but it's been marketed by some other Muslims. So the word Dawah has become provocative from a marketing point of view. We don't want that marketing. We don't want that provocation as it is seen in the contemporary world today. So can you kind of change that term, that term, whatever?" I told him, "Certainly. How about this? How about we change it to Islamic presentation, and when we give the certificates out to the people to the attendees, we call them Islamic presenters and not du'at." They said, "Oh wow, that's great. Wow, Sheikh. It was just a translation." But can you see how much of a difference just that translation made? And guess what, Dr. Syed, I wanted to tell you this. I have never been treated as a da'i the way I was treated as an Islamic presenter. When I went as an Islamic presenter and gave this presentation for 10 days in Oman, I was treated on a corporate level that as an African American, I have never been treated like that before. I was embarrassed.
Mm.
Can you believe I was put in a 5-star plus hotel?
Mm.
My driver, my car was a Jaguar, a midnight blue Jaguar with white glove leather inside. I had 2 drivers for 12 hours each that sat in front of my hotel to do whatever I wanted them to do. I was put in a corporate suite where I didn't have to go downstairs and even order food. I was given a management secretary to send fax, to answer my phone, to receive my guests, or to do whatever I wanted. I had my own sauna, my own steam room, my own. It was crazy. I was like embarrassed. You know, like I didn't even know why they did that. You know, so guess what? It was because they wanted to treat me as an executive. They wanted to give me diplomatic treatment. I never got it before. I'm not trying to put in a plug for Oman. I'm only trying to say that what I realize now is that you get what you call yourself. So if you want to call yourself a da'i, most of the Muslim world expect for you to travel for free, to talk for free, not to get a check at the end, and to go to dinner and be satisfied, to be taking pictures as a celebrity, and to go home with just some minimal, amenities, so to speak, right? And unfortunately, this is what da'i means in the greater part of the Muslim world. So I really appreciate the fact that your group reached out to me as a corporate executive. You respected me, and
you know, Sheikh, you may be taking it as a corporate executive, but to tell you the truth, our perspective is we reached out to you like from completely our mannerisms, the way we interact is 100% traditional, like in terms of like it may come across from that, but I think implanted within our deen there's this concept of ihsan. Like you don't want to relegate yourself to minimal standards or status quo. My philosophy is this: we should treat our shayukh, our respected scholars, each other with the best level possible. We should endeavor to do that, but we should have the training to be as rough and tough as it needs to be. You know what I mean? So we should be able to like, because I've been, Sheikh, what you're going through, I've seen the whole gamut. I've seen people who are like celebrity speakers. They want everything like they're like almost like you have to pamper them. You know, everything has to be like this. If you don't have the right cereal, they will literally have a hissy fit. This is the type of grown men with big beards. Shit, I'm not joking. You don't have that guy's right cereal, he will have a hissy fit. It's crazy. So we have interacted with these types of people, and I've been myself on the receiving end, Sheikh. They put me in a motel, which I thought somebody had recently been murdered in that motel. They brought me as a speaker. I came to, I said, listen, brother, I actually called another, because I was so embarrassed to tell the brother. I called another brother to say, can you just gently tell him that I cannot stay in this place. I will pay for myself to stay somewhere else. So they felt embarrassed and whatever. They put me somewhere else decent. So I've experienced and I've been part of the gamut. I say, as part of Muslims who are endeavoring for ihsan, it is already built within our deen to do the best. But as like the Anbiya did, I'm here not to have any financial gain from you. I'm here to do this for the sake of us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mission, if Islam is a mission, it doesn't matter if I'm paid, if I'm not paid, if I have any challenges, I'm going to fulfill my mission. But at the same time, that's my mission. But we need to understand that, again, ihsan, love, respecting. And so if we need to elevate, like if I have the budget to call somebody in first class, why not? Why not? Why shouldn't we do that? But at the same time, if I have to travel by a camel to get to where I gotta go, okay, it's my mission. I'm gonna get there. You know what I mean? So that's the duality that we try to do, is do the best as we can, and do the best amount of respect, and not take advantage, because I've seen, unfortunately, very good people taking advantage of. We weren't grateful to them, because again, true ikhwa and true gratitude is not just lip service. You know what I mean? If I'm grateful for somebody, it's like, shukr, they equate it to iman, right? And kufr, ingratitude, is equated to each other, right? So shukr, if shukr is like equated to iman, being grateful, say if I'm grateful for you, then iman is a statement on my tongue. Iman is a condition of my heart, and what I do with my limbs, right? So if I'm grateful for, say, if I have somebody who I'm grateful for, and we shouldn't be more great. I think somebody who gets us closer to the deen, that is the person you need to be the most grateful to, because that is the best benefit. There's no other person who can give you a benefit than a person who brings you closer to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I'm grateful for that person, then I can't just be lip service. I need to really love them in my heart. And at the same time, what can I do for you? You know what I mean? What can I do? Because shukr, again, iman is, you can't say a person is iman and they don't show any iman in the actions of their limbs. You know what I mean, Shaykh? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, like, our approach, like I said, is that whatever we can do in any manner that we can, we just want to find good, authentic people. And it's like that, if you're able to find that, and you can bring those core principles back in terms of how we deal with each other, in terms of our objective, in terms of our mission, you get enough of those people, as you mentioned, Sheikh, there's going to be immense change. Will cause that is the hardest fixture to put in. Once you put in that fixture, the lights will go on.
Do I feel that the New York police are providing enough protection, or do I have to have protection of my own? I look for protection from Allah.